Hey everyone, welcome to Question Period Rewind. I'm Donna Skelly, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. Get ready to travel back in time to 1986, the year when Microsoft went public, the Oprah Winfrey Show was first syndicated, and when Wayne Gretzky was at the top of his game with the Edmonton Oilers, breaking his own NHL record for the most assists and the most points in a season. These are records, by the way, that he still holds to this day. Now, let's take a listen to what the House was talking about.
Oral questions. The Leader of the Opposition.
My question, Mr. Speaker, is for the Premier. Last week, after the first time my colleague from Sarnia disclosed a lot of very relevant information about the then Minister of Mines, you were quoted as saying, quote, "If all those things are correct, it appears to me he couldn't continue." You were referring to your Minister of Mines. Could you tell us what wasn't correct in the member for Sarnia's allegations that day?
Speaker, there are a number of things that weren't factually accurate. I think he suggested that the shares were transferred on March 3rd. That isn't accurate. That's when they were registered. They were transferred before that. That's just one thing that was incorrect in the situation.
Supplementary.
That'll do it.
Order.
That'll do it.
Supplementary.
Would you wonder, Mr. Speaker, if the Premier would agree with me that the main thrust of the allegations made that day by my colleague was that the Minister of Mines held shares in one mining company, we only knew about one then, in one mining company while he was Minister of Mines, and did not disclose that to the public and to the clerk and to yourself as required by the Conflict of Interest Guidelines?
Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's quite clear the facts as laid out by the Minister, and I recall the sequence of last week. I reported to you what I knew, what Mr. Fontaine had told me the day after, and then he made a very clear statement. I think the facts have all been laid out, and this House knows I understand it. There's one block of shares that have been sold. Another block, and I guess it's a contentious block that we're talking about, was an escrow, which he acknowledged in this House that he did not declare. He was under the impression, I understand, that in fact, because they were in the hands of a trust company, that he had no control over them, that in fact he did not have legal ownership. Now, I understand that you have a different interpretation of that, but I think a fair-minded person like yourself would want to acknowledge that it's not as clear-cut as you would want to suggest in the situation. You're suggesting, presumably, that he had something to hide. He had no control over those shares, and which I think he acknowledged in this House. I recognize there can be a difference of opinion, but I think the honourable member would not want to characterize this as a completely clear issue, because it isn't.
Order. Final supplementary.
Well, in my final supplementary, Mr. Speaker, I do want to clarify this as a very simple, clear, unclouded issue. That issue is very clear and simple. The Minister of Mines owned, even if he did not have day-to-day control, he clearly owned the shares. I think if you read the Minister's statement, he cannot and does not deny he owned the shares. We'll find out later in the inquiry whether he controlled it or not. But the issue is he owned them. He stood to benefit if those shares went up in value. Even the Premier can't deny that. And he stood to lose if the shares went down in value. That's what ownership is all about. Now, I put this question to the Premier. Given the fact that you have now been over Mr. Fontaine's statement of last Thursday, I suppose, the issue is this: do you or do you not believe that Mr. Fontaine complied with your conflict of interest guidelines?
Premier.
Speaker, to the honourable member, it's quite clear that the minister, the former minister, had a legal opinion that those shares could not have been transferred. Now, I think you're quite entitled to make the argument that he should have. Ownership is not all that. You'd like a yes and no answer to the situation. You always do. I'd say respectfully, it's not quite that clear. He was under the impression that he had no control of them, which he didn't. They're in the hands of a trust company. That he had nothing he could do with the situation, and he believed he was not in a conflict. And I gather had legal advice to that end. That was the opinion on which he was operating. Look, I don't know all the answers to this situation. I say that very fairly. I say it's sufficiently grave. I think the Honourable House Leader has referred this to a committee of the House. You can draw your own conclusions in that particular matter. If you're suggesting there's any personal benefit, I know of none. If you're suggesting that there was some way that he has made money out of this situation, I know of none. You may know of some. Your detectives may know of some way that he's done it, and please bring forward the information. If you said that he made a technical error in not writing those down, I think you could legitimately make that argument. But it's a matter of interpretation. The minister understood that there was no clarity on this matter. There wasn't an absolute black and white issue, and he did what I believe is the honorable thing. He resigned and made the judgment that you're very quick to make and hasten to make, because you obviously would like to hang him out if you possibly can, and I understand where you're coming from on this matter. But he said, look, he probably should have technically complied. There was legal arguments why he didn't do so, and then he said, put the case to the people of Cochrane North. That was the decision he made.
Order. New question. Leader of the Opposition.
The Premier clearly has the lowest guidelines and the lowest standards of conflict for his ministers of any Premier in the country, bar none. Mr. Speaker, my second question is for the Premier as well, with regard to one of his other difficulties and concerns. The Premier may recall that recently it was reported that Ontario had lost 2 of its top spinal surgeons to the United States because of the Premier's plan to ban extra billing. At the time, the Premier said that he didn't see any trend and wasn't too concerned. My question to the Premier is this. In the 4th week of the strike, we have now learned that a 3rd world-class, to use your expression, orthopedic surgeon from Sick Children's Hospital, Dr. Colin Mosley, has also indicated his intention to leave. There are 7 on the team. 3 have left in the last 9 months now, including Dr. Mosley. 2 had been there for 16 years. Does the Premier still contend that there is no trend that specialists will not leave this province?
Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I wasn't aware of the specific example that you've just raised now, but I wouldn't think out of 17,000 doctors, 3 is indicative of a trend.
Order. Supplementary. Order. Supplementary.
Too bad we don't have a world-class.
I want to ask the Premier to tell us seriously for a moment how in this province, when children who are suffering from spinal deformities that have been getting until now world-scale treatment from these very doctors at Sick Children's Hospital, how he is going to assess when this becomes a trend. Are you not worried? Will you not at least today agree to express your concern and say you are worried about the fact that these top-notch surgeons are now no longer going to be available at Sick Children's Hospital as a result of Bill 94?
Premier.
Speaker, I don't know the specific circumstances of the 3 doctors that you pointed out. Other doctors have left this province, as you well know, over the past several years. But at the same time, a large number are coming here. I understand that there are lineups of doctors from outside of this country and this jurisdiction who are anxious to become licensed in Ontario. Well, I can just tell my honourable friend this, that we'll license, I believe, something like 1,400 doctors this year in the province of Ontario. 600 of them or so are products of medical schools in Ontario, about a quarter of them outside of Ontario in Canada, and others from around the world. Now, I'm not happy when doctors choose to leave. It's a free country, and they're entitled to do that. It's one of the freedoms that they want, obviously, and if they make those decisions, they're entitled to do so.
Order. Final supplementary.
Surely the Premier, even the Premier, will have to agree and acknowledge that you don't get surgeons of the caliber that we are talking here the day they are licensed, it takes 5 to 10 years till they develop the kind of expertise that has attracted patients from all over the world to come to Sick Children's Hospital to get that sort of care and attention. My question to the Premier, therefore, is this. Since up until now, children in Ontario have had their spinal deformities dealt with and resolved at the Sick Children's Hospital, and since in the future they will not be able to get much of that surgery at the Sick Children's Hospital in Toronto, is the Premier prepared to make a commitment not to pay part, but all of the costs of travel and surgery in Los Angeles, where Dr. Mosley is currently moving, for the children in Ontario who won't be able to get it here?
Speaker, I guess the honourable member is trying to suggest that all these doctors are just motivated by money, and I don't believe that is the case. And one of the problems, and my honourable friend will know, that extra billing does not acknowledge the special expertise that he's talking about. Extra billing, one doesn't have to have a special length of seniority or special competence or special merit to extra bill. Anyone can extra bill under the system. And I believe it's frankly one of the deficiencies in the system. When we've discussed the matter with the OMA, we recognize there are certain special circumstances, being a special circumstance, or the so-called doctors of special merit that may deserve a special compensation. We're prepared to sit down and talk about exactly that situation with the OMA. But unfortunately, your approach of keeping extra billing does not address the problems that you've talked about.
New question? Order. New question, the member for York South.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Premier about Mr. Fontaine. I'd like to ask the Premier, Mr. Fontaine says on page 3 of his statement, and I quote, "I forgot to list the escrow shares." Is it the Premier's view that he should have remembered to list the escrow shares?
No question, Mr. Speaker. I would have preferred that he had listed those escrowed shares. But I understand. There's no question about that, obviously. But I think you heard the honourable member's explanation, and what he said is he had legal advice on that particular matter that I was not privy to at the time. Surely you can understand that.
Order.
How
Supplementary.
How can one have legal advice as to whether one should forget or remember something? That's I don't know what lawyer can give you advice on how to remember or forget something, Mr. Speaker. I mean, either he forgot or he took legal advice. You can't have it both ways. He said he forgot. You're saying he took legal advice. We're entitled to know which one it is. On page 7 of his statement, Mr. Speaker, the member said, "I'm owed approximately $13,000 by Evolution Hearst. I'm also owed approximately $50,000 by United Sawmill and Rene Fontaine Holdings Limited." Is it the Premier's view that he should have disclosed those two debt interests?
Mr. Speaker, frankly, I'm not sure of the answer of that situation. My view was that I have a fairly simple view that everything that we do should be open to public scrutiny, and I say to you that everything we do is got to be open. It's going to have to bear up to the judgments that other people want to apply to it, you or the member of the leader of official opposition or others. And so I have suggested to all of my colleagues that the facts must stand on themselves. Now, various people will draw various interpretations about why it was done or attribute special motives to it in the situation. I would prefer, obviously, that all of these things had been laid out, and I think my former colleague, gave you an explanation of this on Friday last. You will have the opportunity, I remind you, to go into these questions at a committee hearing. It's been referred by the House Leader to put forward any view you have on this situation.
Order. Final supplementary.
The person that I want to ask questions about the resignation of Mr. Fontaine has not resigned. It's the Premier of the province, and I have very direct questions for him. I'd like to ask the Premier, since he's not clear at all as to what the meaning of any of the guidelines apparently is, can he tell us why he accepted Mr. Fontaine's resignation on Thursday?
Premier?
You may or may not know that when someone resigns, you don't have the power to accept or not accept. That's the reality of the situation. Well, let me just tell you something. You see,
Order.
you may be a...
Order.
Let me explain, Mr. Fontaine.
Order.
Let me explain, Mr. Fontaine, to you. He felt very clearly in his own mind and in his own heart, and you happen to know him, and he's a man of great conscience, that he had not violated any of the conflict of interest guidelines. That was his view of the situation. He also had gone through some some attacks in this House from the members opposite, and he felt his honor was at stake. Now, you're asking me to cast myself in the role of judge and jury and all of these matters, very difficult questions, but he did the honorable thing, which I think you have to acknowledge, that he resigned his House, and he resigned from his House and resigned from the Executive Council to put his case before the people. Now, what you should do, if you've got a different view, you go to Cochrane North and you express how you see the situation. That's what you should do.
Order. 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 I'll just wait. Order. New question, the member for York South.
Mr. Speaker, there's no dispute with the people of Cochrane North. The issue is for the Premier of the province, not for the people of Cochrane North. That's where the buck stops. That's where the buck stops. That's where the issue lands. That's where the issue lands. Now, I know the Premier is now getting advice from three different people, from all of his advisors. I'd like to ask the Premier, can he confirm that the witness to Mr. Fontaine's resignation is in fact the Premier's secretary? Can he tell us what discussions he had, can he tell us what discussions he had with Mr. Fontaine on Thursday and on Wednesday and on Tuesday last, and precisely what his advice to Mr. Fontaine was during all these proceedings?
Premier.
Mr. Fontaine, obviously after the discussion in this House, reviewed his entire situation, which he shared with the members of the House. I am told that he, in discussing it with his son on, I believe, would it be the Wednesday, discussing this matter, because obviously he was very troubled by this situation and the allegations that we made, discussing with his son, and his son suggested to his father that he may want to, he should resign in the situation. And that was where the idea came from, and when he suggested that to me, then I said, if you feel that is the honorable course in the circumstances, you have to follow your own conscience in this matter. And he decided in his own mind to let the people of Cochrane North make the judgment on this matter. I know you would prefer to make the judgment on this matter, as would others in this situation. But you see, I think ultimately it's the will of the people of this province predominate, and I think even you have to respect that.
Supplementary.
That is the phoniest excuse I think I've ever heard in this House with respect to what it is. It's just so phony. No, it's so phony. Can the Premier explain how? Can the Premier explain, first of all, who in this House ever for a moment challenged the right of the member of Cochrane North to sit as a member of this Assembly? Nobody did that. Nobody, not a soul did that. And can the Premier explain how calling a by-election has got anything to do with changing the guidelines, or what the guidelines are? Is the Premier seriously suggesting that if the member is elected as a member for Cochrane North, that somehow gives him immediate and automatic access to the cabinet when he's already admitted that he broke the guidelines? Can the Premier explain what the connection is between those two things? What is the connection?
Premier.
Some days it looks good.
As you know, this matter will be discussed by a committee of the legislature, and you're going to have your opportunity to put this thing forward. You obviously feel that your judgment is superior on this matter to anyone else, and you'd like to attack my judgment on the matter. But I think a fair-minded gentleman like yourself would like to acknowledge that the facts may not be completely as you see them in black and white terms. He felt that his honor was under attack, whether you know it or not. That's the way he responded to this situation. He felt that the member from Sarnia was attacking his personal integrity. He obviously felt it was intact, and he did what he felt was the honorable course in the circumstances. Surely you understand that.
You wouldn't understand.
What is the Premier's view? What is the Premier's view of his?
You wouldn't do it. You don't have any.
Order.
You wouldn't do it.
Order.
You wouldn't.
Order.
Resign
Order. Order. Final supplementary, the member for York South.
Speaker, the Premier has made a very long statement today in which he has not at any point in this statement indicated what his responsibilities are with respect to the guidelines. Can the Premier tell us what is his view of his role with respect to the guidelines? What difference does it make what guidelines exist if the Premier of this province isn't prepared to do what is necessary to be done to see that those guidelines are enforced. What good are any guidelines, Mr. Speaker, if the Premier of the province is at every occasion simply going to wash his hands and say, well, it's not up to me, it's up to the people of any given constituency to decide? What role does the Premier see for himself in terms of what has happened to Mr. Fontaine, the orchestration of the by-election which has taken place, and his continued evasion of his responsibilities as the Premier of the province with respect to conflict of interest?
Premier.
I'm not sure why my honourable friend is so fearful of the judgment of the people of this province on this matter or any other. I can tell you, that's what democracy is all about. Now, I say to you, I say to you again, that the honourable member had legal advice on a number of matters. We have turned the matter, he has resigned. He's turned the matter over to a House, where it's a matter of a committee of this House. You're entitled to make your judgment, and if you see it all so simply, then you come and express your point of view. You see, what you would set yourself up above the people of this province, and I would never do that. And that's the ultimate expression of democracy that my friend from Cochrane North has acknowledged. Why don't you go to the people and make the case that you want to make? You see it as all so clear, but let me tell my honourable friend, when you look at all the circumstances and all the advice that the honourable minister got, you will realize why we have to look at this situation in all of its ramifications. You think this matter is also very clear. Let me tell you, if you're ever charged with responsibility, you know it is not in these matters. These are not black and white situations, and you would want to participate.
Order! Order! Order. Order. New question. The member for Sarnia.
Mr. Speaker, the Premier for once is half right. The honourable thing for the Minister to do was to resign, which he did. The dishonourable thing for the Minister to do was to resign his seat, which was never at question in this House by myself or any other member of this Assembly. You know, it's interesting to note that a reporter, by way of question to the Premier, is the Premier aware that a reporter had a conversation with the President of Golden Tiger? During the course of that conversation with the President of Golden Tiger, it apparently came to pass that certain questions were raised, one of which was mining taxation for this province, the level of value of the shares, and a whole series of things were discussed between your former minister and the President of Golden Tiger. Does the Premier think that while a minister holds the portfolio of mines, that it is appropriate for him to have such a conversation with the President of that particular company?
Premier?
You know, my honourable friend from Sarnia, you want him to resign but not resign. You want him to resign from the cabinet but not resign his seat. You see, this is being put to the ultimate test, and my honourable friend is placed in his own petard. Now, let me say, I'm aware of that press report, as are you. You will have an opportunity in front of a committee of this House to call whoever you want to call, including whoever discussed who with what, and ask them those questions, and then you can put your own view in this particular matter. I have no idea what those private conversations were. You've suggested they talked about the Mining Tax Act. That's been a matter of public knowledge for a long time around here. I'm sure the former Minister of Mines used to talk to a lot of miners about the situation. But if you're suggesting there's any special influence or that Golden Tiger got any special consideration, then that is a very serious allegation. And if you or your detectives can establish that, then I invite you to do that in front of the committee or in this House.
You know, Mr. Speaker, again to the Premier. The Premier is very quickly... The Premier is very quickly taking this issue from the Minister of Mines and making it the Premier's issue. I can tell you that, because it's your judgment, sir, that is in question here. The fact that the shares were in escrow as opposed to being in a blind trust is not at issue. The fact is that the Minister did not disclose his holdings in a mining company while he held the responsibility of looking after mining interests in this province. Why would the Premier not stand up and very clearly indicate to this House that his minister was in violation of the guidelines as they have been in this province for some long number of years, and indicate that the proper course of action was simply for the minister to stand down at his responsibilities as minister and not try to cloud the issue by talking about the minister's personal position as a member of North Cochrane.
Questions been asked. Premier.
My honourable friend would like it always. My honourable friend loves to stand up. You know, my honourable friend would like to stand up and go on and impugn the integrity of a member. That's what he would like to do. He'd like to stand up with the help of his detectives and cast aspersions on the honourable member and or myself and my judgment. But he doesn't want to go to the people on these issues. He wants to avoid the ultimate responsibility on these matters. You see, you can't have it both ways, my friend. If you are going to use your detectives and investigators to make cast aspersions in this House, then you've got to accept the consequences, and the consequences are the people will decide, either in Cochrane North or right across this province. Well, I'll tell you, why don't you put your seat on the line? Why don't you?
Soon, let's go. Put your seat on the line. Ask a doctor's question.
Order.
Gallery.
There are other members that want to ask questions too. The member for York South.
Mr. Speaker, question again for the Premier. By the same logic, can the Premier tell us why the member for Oriel did not resign and why the people of Oriel are not being consulted with respect to the particular allegations with respect to conflict? Resign her seat as a member for Oriel when there have been, which is right? Was the approach taken by the member for Cochrane North right? Should every cabinet minister who's had allegations with respect to a conflict of interest simply to resign their seat and that somehow absolves the government of any problem? Is that your answer?
Premier.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, it was a very personal decision that the honourable member made, and I think you've got some other suggestions, but that was me. Let me tell you, in one case, it was a suggestion let's just go through the history of this situation. You may recall that there were some suggestions of influence peddling with respect to the spouse of the former minister. That was quickly dropped with the suggestion there was some violation of the conflict of interest guidelines. That was a question of a spouse, not of a member of this House, and that matter has been put immediately before the Committee on Public Accounts. There was a suggestion that the other minister, the former Minister of Mines and Northern Development, had himself violated the conflict of interest guidelines. He felt that his honor was under attack, and he made the decision to resign. It's that simple.
Supplementary. The member for York South.
Mr. Speaker, can the Premier tell us what is his responsibility as the Premier of the province, as the person who appoints cabinet ministers? Can he explain his statement that he's made twice now? I gather he made it on Thursday, and I gather that he made it again today, stating categorically that if Mr. Fontaine was elected in the by-election in Cochrane North, that he would automatically come back into the cabinet. Can he explain the logic that says that somebody that's elected in a by-election automatically has access again to the cabinet right away, no matter what the violation has been of the conflict of interest guidelines? Can he explain the logic of that view that he holds? I mean, it doesn't seem to anybody else to make any sense.
It makes great sense to me, Mr. Speaker. You may feel that your personal judgment or the judgment of some members of your party is superior to the people of Cochrane North. I don't accept that view. Ultimately, we are all accountable in that forum. Now, I believe that my responsibility is to share all of the facts in all of these matters with you and all members of the House. And that has been done to the best of our ability to invite scrutiny by you, by anyone else of all of these facts. I accept the fact that you and I may differ in our interpretation of some of these matters, particularly the ones that are not clear. But ultimately, all of these matters will be judged by the people of this province. And I can see now what you will say and what my friends opposite may say in this matter. You may feel that the appropriate forum to deal with these matters is a committee of this House. Well, I can tell you that I think it's been dealt with in an extremely honorable way. But you won't accept that. You'll continue to stand up and make speeches that I haven't. But I can tell you, I think both ministers have dealt with these questions in very honorable ways, shared all the information with you, and I don't know what more you could ask.
New question. New question. Order. New question. The member for Cochrane South.
I think there's only one more thing we can ask, Mr. Speaker, of the Premier. There's one more thing we can ask. Last week, the Premier had to make a judgment. He's referred to it today. Did the member from Cochrane North breach the conflict of interest guidelines or not?
I say to you very frankly that he does not believe, and on the basis of advice he got, that he believes the conflict of interest. I say to you it's sufficiently grave. I say it's sufficiently grave. I can see both sides of the issue very strongly. I don't think there was any personal benefit in the situation. I think he believed they were in escrow. He had no control over the situation, and for that reason, but given the fact his honor was under attack, he did what he did, and he will let the people of Cochrane North judge that matter.
Have an election to fight. What about Georgia?
Order. The member for Cochrane South, supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, there is one more thing we're entitled to know. Last week, the Premier had to make a judgment. He's referred to it in the legislature. Did the member from Cochrane North breach the conflict of interest guidelines or not?
Mr. I think I acknowledged last week there may have been a technical violation. And I think that's, well, okay, that's fair enough. There may have been a technical violation in that matter, and I will acknowledge that. And I said that last week. But I said ultimately the people of Cochrane North will have to judge on this matter, whether a technical violation is a substantive violation. Are you arguing, if you're arguing that what you're arguing is that because he did not write that down, that he's in conflict of interest and therefore has to resign? Are you arguing that he benefited personally? What are you arguing in this matter? Are you saying he should be punished because he forgot to write that matter down? Let's focus on the issue. What I have said to you last week is I believe he should have written it down. I wish he had. Is that grounds to have him removed from the cabinet? There is the question that frankly, he made the determination that matter should be judged by...
New question. New question. Order. New question, the member for Riverdale.
I have a question for the Minister of Housing. Mr. Speaker, the tenants of Ontario need to know what Bill 51 means so that they can plan their lives. Unfortunately, last Thursday, the minister said, when it is passed, we will be able to determine the rate by which it will be increased in January of 1987. Surely that's like renting an apartment and then asking what the rent is going to be. Will the minister confirm today that if Bill 51 is passed as is, the $500 rent I spoke of last week will increase not by 4%, which is $20 a month, but by $26 or $36 or $51 or $78 a month, depending on which bonus he is given to the landlords of Ontario.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member indicated about a $500 rent. Again, let's assume, that, my honourable friend, that you would say that the $500 rent would have fallen into a pre-1976 building, because all depends, Mr. Speaker, on where and what building that this $500 unit is being attached to. If it had fallen under the post-1975 building, it would have the increase of a 4% retroactive 1st of August 1985. If, Mr. Speaker, that the honourable member is thinking about what the rate would be for 1987, the guideline that is being proposed in Bill 51 has indicated that should the inflation maintain at the same level, that it's possible that the guideline will be in the region of 5.1. As I said to the honourable member previously, that I don't have the crystal ball to know exactly what the inflation will be then. So we are saying that, Mr. Speaker, in passing the Bill 51, and if inflation, and I repeat, maintains the same, the guideline for that specific unit will be increased for about 5.1%.
Supplementary.
I think, Mr. Speaker, the answer was yes, but I'm not sure.
Try a supplementary.
The minister's bill talks about a guideline which we have played around with. It's called Ricky, and he says that that might be about 5.1. His bill requires that guideline to be known in August of the year preceding the year in which it will be applied. So the minister must know today what the guideline will be for January the 1st, 1987.
Minister?
And if he does not, will he not agree today to withdraw all this Ricky and Bocce and bring in a 4% that everybody can understand?
If the member, Mr. Speaker, as he said, he wants a precise answer, I'd like to tell him precisely it is July the 2nd, 1985, not August, to begin with. 1986, I'm sorry.
Now you're precise.
It's the first correct response or interjection I've heard from those members there, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, the 4% that the honourable member keep harping on in itself, in the past, where there were rent review guidelines, it had no, in a sense, Mr. Speaker, had no relevance to what the real increases were.
Right.
The guideline that will be in place, Mr. Speaker, is very relevant to the operating costs of how landlords operate their business, and it has much more significance to rental units.
New question, the member for Frontenac, Addington.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Energy. Now that the Kingston to Ottawa transmission line is proceeding, could the minister indicate whether local workers will be given an opportunity to participate in this Ontario Hydro project?
Order. Minister.
Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker.
Order.
The Eastern Transmission Line, of course, is in the very early stages of construction, and the clearing is beginning to get underway. And it's my impression, from talking with Ontario Hydro, that preference will be given to those people that register down through the union halls in that area. And I believe that that's going to happen in the immediate future.
New question. The member for Cochrane South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Premier, I think we are entitled to an answer. Well, the Premier had to make a judgment, a decision last week. Did the member from Cochrane North breach the conflict of interest guidelines or not?
I told the honourable member I think there was a technical violation. I said that 3 or 4 days ago.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, in light of the Premier's comments concerning the events following August the 14th, the Premier reappointed the member from Cochrane North to the Cabinet if he had not resigned his seat?
Premier?
I don't follow your question exactly. As I said, the honourable member resigned his seat, and then he felt as a matter of his portfolio, as a matter of honor, went on and resigned his seat. That's what he felt was the appropriate thing to do in the circumstances. And as I said, I think one can make the case there was a technical violation. If you've asked me if he benefited from it, the answer is no. If in any way that he got a benefit that was any untoward, that he put his own personal interests ahead of his public interests or his public duties, the answer, in my opinion, is no. You ask me, I'm telling you.
New question. The member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Housing. The Minister is well aware of the situation at the Bonaventure Apartments, 180 McLaren Street, in the riding of Ottawa Centre. When the Minister tabled legislation to control the loss of affordable rental housing in Bill 11 on May 5th, those tenants had great hopes. But on June 3rd, the owner of 180 McLaren Street received a building permit from the city to convert many of the 90 units to apartment hotel units, for which he calculates he might receive up to $1,200 a month in rent. Will the Minister make the provisions of Bill 11 retroactive to May 5th, so that the many tenants who counted on this bill to protect their tenancies won't be evicted and lose their homes?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member raised that question before. Bill 11, as hopefully I know, will be before the House today for its second reading. It is my intention, Mr. Speaker, not to make the bill retroactive.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I wonder if the minister realizes that what he has done is he's declared open season on tenants between May 5th and June 3rd in the case of the Bonaventure, and May 5th and whenever the bill is assented to in the case of all other tenants.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member again is very concerned, and I know she's quite a very good member in her writing. And I would then ask, Mr. Speaker, I would then ask her that she proceed very quickly in supporting this Bill 11, that we can have this, none of these incidents happening again in the future.
New question, the member for Bray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the Minister of Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, the deadline for applications for the Red Meat Stabilization Program was the end of June. Can you inform me as to what the response was to the program for the beef, hog, and sheep programs? And also, can you inform me if you intend to add to this list a program for background or feeder cattle sometime in the near future?
Minister.
Well, thank you very much for the question.
Order. Order.
He didn't ask it. Jim Taylor was going to ask this question.
Order. You may make the minister strain his voice. Minister. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, for an industry that's so important to Ontario and one that is struggling at the present time, it's really a shame that the opposition party spend so much of their time trying to discredit members of this House rather than putting some importance in the agricultural industry. And I'm pleased to get that kind of a question from my colleagues.
Response?
Private detective to ask that question.
The latest figure that I was given, Mr. Speaker, was that we had around 5,000 applications for the program, which the honourable member alluded to. The deadline was the end of June. I'll report to the member the latest figure, hoping I can get it today, as to how many applications we received by the end of June, which was, as I say, the deadline period. What was the second?
Supplementary.
Ask them to ask the private detective.
Order. Supplementary.
The other part of that question, Mr. Speaker, was is there going to be a program come in for background or cattle sometime in the future? But just a minute, relating to that, that was the first
was a good
question.
supplementary.
But the other part to my question was there is a considerable penalty for anybody who misses that deadline of June 30th. And I was wondering if you had going to have some consideration to extending that deadline.
Minister. Order. Minister.
Well, once again, we'll have to see how many applications were received by the end of June, and we will then make a decision as to whether we will be prepared to extend the deadline. We realize that we were a little slow in getting some of the application forms out, and the farmers got busy with the seeding and therefore didn't have the time really to sit down and fill out the application. So these are all matters that we will take into consideration. There's a possibility we could extend the deadline, but it will depend on how many applicants were able to submit their applications by that by that deadline. As far as the backgrounder program is concerned, yes, the committee is presently striving for a backgrounder program, but we can't get the cattlemen in particular to agree across the country as to what kind of a program we should put in place for backgrounder cattle. But I understand that the committee are getting very close to reaching some agreement, and hopefully we'll have a backgrounder program in place by next year.
New question, the member for Brantford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Mr. Premier, the Minister of Education has indicated to me by letter that Mr. Abe Schwartz has acted on his behalf in the ministry as an advisor on computer matters since last September and continues to do so even to this day. My question to the Premier is, do you not think it a possibly troublesome situation that those same companies that are going before the Ministry of Education for contracts are the self-same companies that are being solicited by Mr. Schwartz to participate in his Exploricom project? Does the Premier not see that as a potentially troublesome, if not a situation of conflict situation?
Premier?
The answer is no. I don't see anything you've raised as being troublesome. But if you've got some suggestions or specifics that are troublesome or undue influence being used, I'd appreciate your sharing the information with me.
Well,
supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The problem we have, Mr. Premier, is that you are refusing to bring the list of computer contracts before us until October. But the minister was kind enough to at least give us the software contracts that his ministry has awarded, and we find that the largest software contract given out by the Ministry of Education the last year, in fact, did go to one of the 6 companies that's participating in Exploricom. Now, there are over 1,000 computer companies in the province of Ontario. Does the Premier not agree that this looks very strange and that you could clear up this situation by bringing forward all the contracts so that members of the House can peruse them?
Mr. Speaker, this is typical. This is absolutely typical. And I say to the honourable member, I say as sincerely as can, no, it does, to me, does not look strange at all. But you see, and if you've got your detectives with information that there's been some untoward influence, then please bring it up. You have been sniffing around Exploricom like a puppy in heat for the last several months. You have sniffed around. You have made no serious allegations. You think there's something there. I can tell you this: you don't have anything. Now, if you have some information, stand up and share it with us. But you see, well, you know, it is so remote, in my opinion, from what you have presented in this House, from any influence being used, that and you continue to stand up in this House and make suggestions, drawing things that are absolutely unrelated together to try to suggest that somebody's profiting. Let me tell you, I don't think there's anything strange about it at all. I think what's strange about it, is you would be...
Order. 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 New question. Order. New question, the member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Energy in regard to the gasoline price forums which were held across Northern Ontario the last couple of weeks, forums which were completely unadvertised in Sault Ste. Marie, and I don't know about other communities. But in the Sioux, the minister's representative, a senior advisor with the Ontario Ministry of Energy, stated that there's the possibility of collusion among Sioux dealers and that could be a factor in the high gasoline prices and lack of competition. However, the dealers in Sault Ste. Marie have contradicted that and have said, quote from the Sioux Star, gas prices are set by the oil companies in Toronto. Dealers in Sault Ste. Marie, no matter who they work for, have no control over the price.
Question?
I'd like the minister to tell us whether he and his ministry have been able to determine whether the collusion is in fact between the dealers in Northern Ontario, or is the collusion going on within the head offices of the oil companies in Toronto?
Minister?
And will the minister enforce some regulation on gas prices to see that we have some equitable pricing of gasoline in this province?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, when such questions are raised, of course, I wouldn't be able to give an answer as to whether there has been collusion among the retailers or the major oil companies. But certainly I would take that question under advisement and get back to the honourable member.
New supplementary.
This is an issue which supposedly is being addressed by your ministry, and apparently they've been doing studies on this issue for nearly a year to this point. You've gone out to the public to get input. Your own ministry representative has said there's a possibility of collusion among the dealers. The dealers are telling you that the prices are being set by the companies in Toronto. What are you going to do to ensure that there is regulation of prices of gasoline in this province and that the people have fair and equitable prices in Northern Ontario?
The question's been asked. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think the very question about major dealers was exercised at a federal forum, and were found that there had not been at that level. Now, I'm not prepared to say that with the question the honourable member is raising, but you have to accept the fact that those kind of allegations are going to require some investigating, and that in proper time I should return with an answer to you. Certainly we are concerned about the prices in Northern Ontario, and we're addressing ourselves to the question in a very major way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
New question, the member for Brampton.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of the Environment. Mr. Minister, in my community right now there is an investigation going on for a new landfill site. And what I want to ask you is what triggers the environmental assessment hearing, and what will be the effect if one of the sites that's been reviewed has not had testings on it?
Minister.
The question as I heard it related to what, in terms of a new landfill, as the Greenfield landfill site, would trigger an environmental assessment. As some members of the House who have been here for many years would know, what happens now is that when you have a greenfield site, as it's called, this is a new landfill site anywhere in the province of Ontario that is being proposed by a municipality, that comes under environmental assessment. First of all, Mr. Speaker, of course, the municipality must undertake an exhaustive review of all of the options available. Many of those options are those which are various sites within that municipality. Once they have done that and come forward with the proposal, it then goes before the Environmental Assessment Board for final decision.
Supplementary. Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like by way of supplementary to ask the Minister if a particular site, has been initially chosen and rejected, but there's been no drilling done on that site, what would the impact or the effect be of an environmental assessment hearing being called in terms of that site?
Order. Minister.
I'm sorry that members of the official opposition don't consider these matters to be of sufficient importance to listen carefully to what is obviously a very good question from the member. Now, in regard to an environmental assessment, when a landfill site comes under environmental assessment, Mr. Speaker, of course that means that unlike the Environmental Protection Act, which simply deals with that specific site, the Environmental Assessment Act means that those who are putting forward a proposal must also provide alternative proposals in terms of whether they would be other sites or whether they would be other methods of disposing of the garbage. So it is a very full, sometimes I know there's criticism that it's an onerous task. It is sometimes it incurs some additional costs, but we believe that in the long run that by going through this process it will provide a more environmentally sound site than it would without this particular process.
New question, the member for Sarnia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A question to the Premier. The Premier has indicated that the Minister of Mines, in fact, resigned as a matter of honor. I'd like to ask the Premier a very simple, very direct question. Had the Minister of Mines not resigned, would you have allowed him to remain in Cabinet?
Mr. Speaker, he resigned. I'm not going to get all hypothetical about this situation or any other one. We're not get hypothetical about the doctor's situation, as I was asked hypothetical questions every single day. Now, just a minute. an insight over here. I'm just trying to make an analogy. I know they're not easy to grab, Mr. Speaker, but let me say that I said to you that I think there's a technical violation. He resigned from this House and from his seat, and that's where the situation is at the moment. That's very clear.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker.
If the members
The rest of the ministers
supplementary.
need to know what your standards are,
Order.
if any.
I'd inform the member for Nipissing that your colleague wants to ask a supplementary. The member for Nipissing.
Speaker, the Premier indicated that this was a matter of technical interpretation, that in fact the guidelines perhaps were not sufficiently clear, or there was some fogginess with respect to how one might interpret the guidelines as they relate to this specific issue. Now, in this particular case, as I understand it, Mr. Speaker, and I'm getting to the question as quickly as I can, as I understand it, there is a requirement in the guidelines which is reasonably well understood in this House that you must disclose holdings. It has been by admission of the minister himself, the former minister, that he did not, in fact, concur with or agree to what those guidelines required of him, namely to comply by way of disclosure. Since that is in fact the issue here, that the minister did not disclose his holdings, would the Premier have allowed him to remain in Cabinet under those circumstances had he not resigned?
That's the issue. Premier. Mr. Speaker, the facts have been laid forward very clearly in the circumstances. I say to you that I wish he had made that judgment to share that information with everybody. If you're suggesting there was some untoward a gain to him personally as a result of that, that's I don't believe there was. Well, okay. So what you're saying is because he failed to list that because he didn't feel he had to list it. You're saying because there was a sufficiently gray area, it's not a clear-cut question of owning directly X number of shares in a mine or Massey Ferguson or anything else. They were an escrow under which he had no control in the situation, and he got advice to that effect. Now, I say to you, you see it in black and white terms. I would suggest to you other people, including the legal advice he got, does not see it in the same terms you do. But he recognized, I told you how I see it. I think he technically violated the rules in that regard. But if you ask me if there's a substantive breach, the answer is no. And in order to make a judgment on this matter, you're asking, I assume, that he's thrown out of the Cabinet for the rest of his life. Is that what you're asking? He said he took it as a matter of personal honor and resigned his seat. Now, that's where the situation
New question.
Surely the answer to that is very clear.
New question, the member for Bellwoods.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question of the Minister of Labor. In January of 1982, Dr. Annalee Yassi of the Manitoba Federation of Labor's Occupational Health Center completed a study which was commissioned by Paul Weiler. It was a study of how occupational health and safety claims are handled by Ontario's Workers' Compensation Board. Can the Minister explain why he has failed to reply to her letter of July 1985 in which she asked him to reverse the decision of the previous government, which had been to suppress this very important study?
Minister?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it won't probably come as a surprise to the honourable member that I don't recall receiving a letter which, according to the honourable member, I would have received about a year ago. It's certainly not unlikely that I would have not replied to it. I'm rather surprised that when no reply was received, there was not some follow-up. But I'll certainly undertake, Mr. Speaker, to the honourable member and to the House to check into this matter. I'll speak to the honourable member privately, and if we can't locate the correspondence, I'll obtain Dr. Yaffe's telephone number, and we'll get in touch with Dr. Yaffe immediately.
Supplementary?
Yes, well, I appreciate that. The study is entitled Occupational Diseases and the Workers' Compensation Board in Ontario, and the initial decision to suppress the document was communicated by Alan Wolfson in 1985, now reincarnated as one of the major saviors of the Workers' Compensation Board. I would like an assurance from the Minister, not just that he will try to find the correspondence and retrieve it from the swamp, but in fact that he will
reverse the policy of suppressing this important study, because the minister knows how badly the Workers' Compensation Board has handled health and safety claims over the last 2 decades, and in fact release the report.
Minister?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my friend from Bellwood slips into the unfortunate rhetoric of his colleague from Sudbury East. Mr. Speaker, part of the problem, of course, is solved by the fact that my friend from Sudbury East sends so many letters that he loses track and then thinks of the ones he thinks he sent and he didn't get replies to, that somehow they simply weren't replied to. Mr. Speaker, I've indicated to the honourable member that I'll look into the situation fully. It's certainly, Mr. Speaker, not my view that we should withhold any matters, any studies, without very, very good reason. I make a commitment to the honourable member and to the House that we'll take a very close look at the reason why any study would be withheld. As the honourable member knows, for example, in an earlier situation with Dr. Mueller's study, we not only indicated that we would give out the preliminary study, but the final study as well.
New question? The member for Scarborough Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Education. In a recent article, Mr. Lewis Wright, Assistant Deputy Minister with the Ministry of the Attorney General, has stated that prayers from a variety of religious traditions in public schools clearly enhances multiculturalism. And it is apparent that it's the government's direction to follow using a variety of opening exercises. And in your view, Mr. Minister, would this policy and direction be required of the separate school boards in this province
Minister?
as well?
Speaker, I think the honourable member is quite aware of what the regulations under the Education Act provide. He will also be aware that various aspects of those regulations are now before the courts, 2 or 3 references in the province at the present time, and he will also be aware from his very stellar performance through many months on the standing committee's handling of Bill 30, what the practices within the separate school community are.
Time for oral questions has expired.